I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, August the 8th, brought to you in part by Performance Livestock Analytics. Performance Livestock Analytics is a livestock technology company that simplifies data and analytics for the livestock industry, owned by the original co-founders, both from rural Osage, Iowa. Their team includes 40 individuals from across the U.S., heavily concentrated in cattle country and heavily influenced in cattle feeding. For more information, go to performancelivestockanalytics.com. Weathering the storm from starting off the week on Monday with your board crashing really hard, harder than any of us thought that we were prepared to take at this time with our positive fundamentals. We're starting to see some feeder cattle receipts come back into our auctions. Everybody was real fearful about bringing cattle into the sales early in the week. They're starting to bring them in here middle of the week, and the market's been down hard early in the week and similar to the middle of the week, but we've got to continue to do business, and we're starting to see some pretty impressive quotes coming back in some of our midweek sales there. But our open interest in cattle futures spiked late in July and then plummeted, which not exactly sure how that compares with what's happened at the market, but that's what's gone on with your open interest there. But your cattle bears that are searching for something to be down in your fundamentals have found it in imports. Through the first 6 months of this year, cattle imports are up 19%. Mexico imports are up 20% on cattle, and it's mostly all feeder cattle being imported from Mexico. But a lot of that has to do with this severe drought that's happened in the northern states of Mexico there, where they import cattle from Mexico, and so we were going to see those cattle regardless. But that's a pretty big influence of cattle there coming from Mexico. And also our Canadian imports are up 15%, but the bulk of those are slaughter cattle coming down to be slaughtered in our plants, and a lot of that comes from a major plant strike that happened up there in Canada. So there's a reason for why that happened, but if they're looking for something to be downer on the fundamental cattle markets, they can find it there. Our politics, we did get a reprieve. Of course, we've been worried about the Kamala surge that's really come on in the last couple of weeks since she's become our new Democratic nominee for president there, without receiving any votes at all, just being handed them to him from President Magoo there. But we did get a reprieve from some of that surge, as she selected a major leftist, a big-time liberal governor from Minnesota, Tim Walz, and they call him Tampon Tim because he made sure that all of your boys in elementary schools, in the boys' restrooms, had access to feminine napkins in the boys' restrooms. So that's going to kind of stick to him, as old Tampon Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, who's now the vice presidential nominee on the Democratic side. But he touts himself as a Midwestern farmer. He actually originates from Nebraska, born in West Point, Nebraska, but I haven't found anybody around West Point, Nebraska that wants to really claim him there. But he grew up working on a farm, but he has not stayed true to that. And the Minnesota farmers that have been under his rule as governor in Minnesota there, they're not real high on him. In fact, in Fosston, Minnesota, we've seen this billboard go up for farmers in northern Minnesota with a picture of somebody with their head up their ass, trying to see what he's seeing through his eyes there, because they're saying that's the way he is, and it's coming from the part of the state that he called just rocks and cows. So evidently he's not really stayed true to too much of his farming background right there. But I was in Beaver, Oklahoma on Wednesday. They had a special cow sale in Beaver, and it was a humdinger there. We sold some really fancy replacement stock at some pretty impressive prices there. They have ranch dispersal from Overton and Finley ranches there with a closed herd that was really top quality cows that had never been to town before. 4 to 6 year old young cows there. And their second and third stage bring from 3,000 to 3,650, which I thought was pretty impressive for the way things were early in this week. And then Pollard Farms come in with some fancy pairs. It's a purebred outfit there. They were not registered, but could be. But 4 to 6 year old young pairs with pretty nice sized calves on them bring from 4,200 to 4,400 per pair. And I thought that was awful good. Let's talk about your board on Wednesday. August live cattle futures were up 30 cents at 182.27. October was up 22 at 179.27. Your back months were all up on live cattle from 7 cents to 62 cents, and that just feels good that it was on the positive note on all of the traded months there. And your cattle have kind of followed the stock market. Of course, the stock market plummeted on Monday, just like your cattle futures did. They were back up on Tuesday, but dropped again on Wednesday about what they gained on Tuesday. So we're glad that the cattle market has held a little bit better than that. Feeder cattle not holding quite as well. August feeder cattle down 37 cents at 242.62, and your latest CME cash feeder cattle index still about 12 bucks better than that. And they will come together on the last traded day of August there. Those August feeder cattle contract and your CME cash feeder cattle index will come together, I'll promise you that. And how that's going to converge, I assume it's going to be a mixture of the two, but they've got to come together. September feeder cattle down 167, ouch, at 238.90. And then the back months from there down, but not as much, from 47 cents to down 90. December corn was down 4.5 cents on Wednesday at $4.75 a bushel. November beans down 8 cents at 10.18 3/4. Hard red winter wheat for September was down 6 cents at 5.55 Fat cattle trade, we did start to see some negotiated fed cattle trade in your 5 area feeding region there, and it was similar to that little drip of trade that we saw earlier in the week, and it's about $3 lower for the most part in the northern plains. Not as much lower in the southern plains though. Iowa sold 3,200 on Wednesday, 6,400 for the week, and your live prices on Wednesday in Iowa from 190 to mostly all 193, and like I said, that's $3 lower. 305 on a dress basis, and that's sure $5 lower. Nebraska sold 2,400 on Wednesday, 2,850 for the week. Live sales were mostly 193 with some up to 194 on a live basis in Nebraska, and dress sales again like Iowa at 305. Kansas sold 1,800 head, and they were mostly all 190.50. Of course, that's going along with the northern market. They're buying just a little bit discount there south of the Nebraska border into Kansas, but they're taking them up north there to slaughter. But 190.50, that sounds pretty good to that 188 they had last week in the bulk of Kansas. But we did see some sales late in Kansas at 187. That's only $1 off of last week and not too awful bad. Texas did not have any confirmed sales there on Wednesday. Did have a fat cattle auction up in the northern plains. Sioux Falls Livestock in Worthing, South Dakota had 1,000 head for their slaughter cattle, including some cows, but conventional fat cattle there sold from 193 to 206, and that was $5 to $7 lower, but that 206 sounds awfully good. Did have a few program cattle in there, but they did not sell at any premium. Box beef cutout values were lower again. Choice was down 196 at 313.85, and selects down 79 cents at 298.83. Your slaughter keeping up pretty well so far this week. Up through the first 3 days of the week, 363,000 estimated slaughter on cattle. That's 3,000 better than last week at this point, 6,000 less than the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. We're having a lot of fun with the Punchy Pick of the Month contest, guys. Be getting your photos in. If you get a photo when you're out doing chores or working cattle or doing something, you get a punchy pick, send that punchy pick into punchy@nationalbeefwire.com. You're all automatically entered to win the grand prize at the end of the month, which includes a big box full of all kinds of goodies from Beaver Feed Company in Beaver, Oklahoma, Beaver County Stockyards in Beaver, Oklahoma, NationalBeefWire, Feeder Flash. But the best part of that grand prize is the whole case of Fairpiece, which is a revolutionary product that is scientifically proven. About $3 a dose, guys. It works so well, even if you don't believe in it, you got to try it. It's too cheap not to try. Check out this video that I'm going to tack on to the end of this Feeder Flash episode, guys. Talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on DVAuction, based on an 800-pound cash auction steer up through your middle 12 states, just like your CME feeder cattle index, fell big on Wednesday, sitting at 250.23 at the end of Wednesday's trade. That's down 366 compared to the end of Tuesday. So that's a big drop. CME cash feeder cattle index has not seen that drop yet because it's always a day and a half or so behind. But the latest CME cash feeder cattle index was 254.72. Talk about your big sales on Wednesday. Of course, the biggest and of your high volume sales there, OKC West in El Reno, Oklahoma, in recent weeks has been your biggest sale. And even though light receipts because of the down market, again, was your biggest sale of your high volume markets. They had 4,800 head, which is not big for them, but not too bad of receipts for this week. Feeder steers $5 to $8 lower. Feeder heifers fully $5 lower. Calves on Tuesday, weaned calves $5 lower, and not weaned from $10 to $15 lower. But a pretty impressive quote that I saw on Wednesday on feeder steers was 101 head of 805-pound feeder steers bring 254, and that's pretty impressive for the way things are. Give you some individual quotes from all around the country. How about JC Livestock Sales in Junction City, Kansas? Sells 63 steers, weight 790 pounds at 267. Cherokee Sales Company in Cherokee, Oklahoma sells 61 steers, weight 857 at 254.5. Thought that was pretty good. How about Winter Livestock in Dodge City, Kansas? They sold 63 steers, weight 761 at 269.50. That'd be a top quote. But the most impressive quote that I saw anywhere on Wednesday in your Macrocin, no BS, top quote for the day. It come out of Green City Livestock Marketing in Green City, Missouri. It's a DVAuction broadcaster there. They had light receipts there, but they did have 3 loads of 850 to 900 pound steers. Pretty impressive there. Those 3 loads had an average weight of 886 pounds and an average price of $258. That's your feeder flash for Thursday.
So my dad was a veterinarian growing up. Always been on the ranch here. I love the ranch life and I like the medicine. Having my own herd, my clients come in and say, I want to do what you do. Or they'll see something in a magazine, what do you think of this? Figuring I've already probably played with it on my own herd. So I saw Fairpiece and I thought, well, this is going to be foo-foo dust. But I will try it because I know some clients are going to say, what do you think of it? Have you tried it? So I weaned my first set of calves and I did the whole herd, 100% of them. And we were working cattle and I walked out. They'd been weaned the day before. We processed them the morning after we get them home. We haul them home from about 20 miles away. So after I'd done the first group of calves that I had processed before, the steers, they were all laying down or they were at the bunk. And I'm like, oh, you guys got to come out and see this. And so they all come out and they're like, oh, that's kind of cool. But we'd done the whole group, everybody was quiet, and I'm like, okay, so we need to split this baby up. And so the second time we weaned, I did my steers with the Fairpiece, and I skipped the heifers. And so I was kind of monitoring. First day, the steers cleaned the bunk. The heifers, I bet they ate 25%. We had to scatter it through the bunk, fluff it up. They didn't even eat enough to refill the bunk. The next day, and I kind of watched to see the heifers definitely never settled down. They were in and out, they were circling, they didn't care to eat. The steers, they'd go to the water tank, they would drink. They didn't just leave because everybody else leave. They meandered around the pen by themselves. They weren't circling. and the appetite was so much better. And so then I saw this on the next day, and I videoed that I pulled up to the bunk and all the steers were at the bunk. 6 of the heifers were at the bunk, and when he pulled up with the feed wagon, all the heifers ran to the back side of the pen who had not received the Ferropeas, and the steers backed up about 12 feet, and as soon as he had moved on down the bunk, they were back at the bunk eating. And I'm like, this is really, really cool. Kind of curious to see what would happen if I treated the calves while we were processing them with Ferropeas, and see when we got to the summer pasture whether they would be as reactive up there as if I had not used the Ferropeas. And so we hauled them, and the calves, they pair up better, they're more calm, they aren't circling pens when they can't find mama, they're quieter, you hardly hear the calves bawl at all, a little bit of talking, but it seems like when I have done that, when mama comes or the cows start to cry, the calves hear her and they pair up easier. I did have a client who, after using it last year, thinks everything that he buys will receive it, which I think it's a no-brainer.